everybody. Let me know that you can hear me. Just move my microphone just slightly away from me. If you can let me know that you can hear me, because I don't want to be drawing for 20 minutes and nobody see me like I did last time. So yeah, just let me know that you can hear this okay, that you can see what's on the paper here, and then we will kind of get started. So just waiting for somebody to say that they can see me, hopefully. I want some big yay, she's live. Oh yes, you can. Oh brilliant. Oh, that's fantastic, loud and clear, wonderful. Oh, I'm so pleased. Apologies for a couple of things. My nails are absolutely revolting, so that's just a given, unfortunately. Yeah. And I hope everybody is okay, staying safe, looking forward to this afternoon. Volume's a bit low. Okay, hold on a second, let me turn it up. Is that any better? Let me know if that's better. Volume a little low, let me know if that's better. I've just turned it up. So volume's always a bit of a problem with me. Yes, we can hear and see. Can see you but can't hear you. Can hear you. I've just turned my microphone up, so do let me know if that's a little bit better. I'll just sort of hang around for a bit and we'll just get the sound and everything okay. Yeah, is that better? Perfect. Yeah, good. Good, brilliant. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be drawing my Deerhound Vinnie. So this is Vinnie. You should have all of the resources and everything. You should have the image, the line art. Hopefully you've got all of your line art up and running. Better but not great. Right, okay, hold on then. I've got my, let me just see if I can turn it back up a little bit. I've got it really loud. Let me just double check my audio. It's definitely right. I've got it right next to my, it's right next to my mouth. So hopefully once I start, let me just move it around just a touch. It's literally almost in my mouth now. If you could see me. Anyway, so right, so what we're going to do is we're going to be drawing Vinnie. I've got my line art sort of sketched out on my paper. We are going to do an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. I just don't think we're going to have enough time. I don't think we've got enough time to be able to just go and create the whole piece. So I'm going to do the eyes, the nose, and we're going to start on the hair. And then I'm going to carry on drawing later on tonight, and I'm going to record some more of the hair for you, and I'll upload that to YouTube as well. And then you've got everything you need to be able to complete it if you want. It would be fantastic to do sort of like a mammoth live draw and do the whole thing, but I think it's going to take, you know, a good sort of like 7 or 8 hours, and I'm not sure. I could do that, but I'm not sure you're all brave enough to carry on drawing for that amount of time. So the fabulous Evie is going to be either answering your questions or sending me some texts through, and I will try and answer questions as I progress. I'm going to zoom in on the eyes in a second, and then you can you know, we can go in nice and close. As per usual, I'm going to be doing the outside of the eyes first. I apologise if I start. I'm going to try and do it relatively slowly for you, because I know sometimes I can get a bit speedy. So I'm going to go a little bit slow. I know that everybody's going to be working on different paper, so don't worry about that. All I need you to worry about is just lovely light pressure. So again, I'll show you what light pressure looks like. So back of your hand. This is just a Polychromos, it's a cold grey 6, and the light pressure is that. So you don't want to indent your skin at all. That's what my light pressure is. That's your lightest pressure, and that's the pressure that you want to be using in the initial stages of any drawing, and then you can start to increase the pressure as you as you get through the drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom in. Just bear with. Okay, I'm just going to sort the focus out. There we go. Yes, I'm using drafting film, but it won't honestly won't matter that much. You know, it's I wanted to use something that you know, would kind of replicate a smoother paper, so I didn't want to use the pastel mat because I just felt that I'd have to go into all sorts of different techniques for that. So we're going to use the drafting film. So I am going to start with the pencil that I tend to always start with, which is the dark sepia, so the Polychromos dark sepia. What I will do is I'll try and talk you through the pencils as I'm using them, and explain why I'm using them and all of that type of stuff. I probably need to get a piece of paper. So I'm just going to get a bit of a sketchbook just to put under my hand quickly. Right, so this is just a piece of sketchbook paper that I'm going to put underneath my hand just so I don't smudge everything. Now the film I'm using is Polydraw, and it's Polydraw 0.75. Not that that matters to anybody, and it's quite thin. But if you fancy getting some, it's quite a good make. So what we're going to do is we are going to start on this eye here. I'm using the dark sepia. I'm using a relatively sharp pencil, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the outside, and I'm going to start to bring in a little bit of colour on the outside. Now I'm using very, very, very light pressure here. The drafting film takes pigment very quickly and very easily, so using light pressure is a little bit harder on drafting film because you get so much pigment down. So if you're using a pencil on your paper and it's not putting as much pigment as you'd like on the paper, then just increase your pressure very slightly. You're wanting to get just a nice, just making sure that everything's following us, but oh right, okay, that's great. Thanks, Evie. You're just wanting to get a nice even sort of colour on your page, and we're just going very, very slowly, and I'm adding just this dark bit around his eye to begin with. Now the reason that I like to use or I like to do the outside first is I can get the shape and the size correct. So there is nothing worse than drawing the inside, spending ages on the inside of the eye, which is really pretty and you get it all glassy and looking lovely. You come and do the outside and you go, oh, hang on a second, I've done it the wrong size. I find it's much better to do the outside first, get it all in there, get your size and everything correct, and then it's much easier then, and you've got all of the sizing and everything right to then start working on the inside bit. So that's the reason, or one of the reasons that I like to do the outside first. And the other reason is I just think, for me, just doing the inside of an eye, I think looks a bit weird. I think it always ends up looking like I don't know, like a bird or something, with a beak. So that's why I do the outside first. So I'm just sort of using sketchy motions. If you join me for the mouse, I did sketchy motions to begin with and just sort of like started to put my colour in very gently. So we've got this big dark bit around his eye. This is probably one of the darkest areas, but we're not going in really, really dark just yet. We're just sort of putting in those tones first and just building it slowly and gradually. Now I will have my little brush here, which is going to take away some of the pencil dust. Okay, so we don't need to go too far up around the eye, just sort of like the, the structure bit. That's absolutely fine. And then we'll come down here and we'll just have a look at creating this bit of the bottom of the eyelid here. There's sort of like a little bit of a highlight in there, and my suggestion would be that you leave like a little bit of a gap there for that highlight. If you draw over the top of it, you'll have to take it back out again with an eraser or a knife or something like that. So you're better off just leaving any highlights free. And then you know, it's easier then to sort of work around it and create it, rather than just going over the whole thing and then going, oh, and there are ways, of course, that you can then take the highlight out. But if you can kind of isolate your highlights, it's better really. So I'm just going to come around in here and add a little bit of dark in here. And so the eyes do take quite a while, you know, and that's purely because we build them slowly. We want to put as much colour in there as possible, and we want them to look really nice and glassy and eye-like. So, you know, it's better to take your time. People talk about coloured pencil being a slow medium, and they are 100% right. It is a slow medium, but it doesn't matter. You know, it may be a slow medium, but it's such a lovely medium to use. It's so clean. You don't have to kind of tidy up after yourself. There's no real dust, you know, and actually you can completely lose yourself, you know, in your drawing, you know, and especially this time that we're all going through at the moment, where we're all sort of stuck in our houses, isolated. You know, for me, I'm stuck in the house with 3 teenagers, so you know, that's a lot of fun. I have to say, they're really good actually. But you know, being able to lose yourself maybe for, I don't know, half an hour a day, you know, doing something like this is really beneficial, because you know, you forget about stuff. You just become in the zone, and it's lovely. So here we go. With this first eye, we've kind of got the outsidey bit done. I'm just going to bring in a colour. Have I got a very lightish grey? This one is this is warm grey 4, the Polychromos warm grey 4, and all I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to bring it in very lightly, in and around the eye, and you can see how easily the pencil goes down on the film, and hopefully yours should be you know, going down quite nicely as well. It doesn't matter if it's all sketchy or if it's a bit rough, you know, don't worry about it. Everybody's different, everybody's styles are different. Just, you know, the next sort of hour and a half, 2 hours are just yours to enjoy. You know, if you need to go and get another cup of tea or anything like that, do that. You can always rewatch this later. You know, anybody is welcome to get in touch, you know, if they're struggling, you know, afterwards, if you need a little bit of help. Anybody who follows me and knows me knows that I will answer every question that is sent to me. It's something that I love to do, and I will do. You know, so if you've got any burning questions that you maybe don't want to ask on here or whatever, then, you know, do please get in touch. So all I'm doing is I'm just sort of very lightly sketching in a little bit of grey around his eye here. Now, what Evie might have to do after 2 hours is actually ring me and tell me to stop, because I'm very likely to keep going. Just double check. What pencil sharpener do you use, Bonnie? Oh, I'm just seeing these. Volume is better, blah, blah, blah. What pencil sharpener do I use? I use, it's called the Swordfish Curve, and it's a crank sharpener. And it's really good because it fits all of the different widths of pencils in. So the different pencils that I use come in different widths. So you get sort of relatively skinny ones like the Prismas. Then you get the normal sized ones like the Polychromos and the Pablos. And then you get ones that are fatter like the Luminance and the... We've got one. So these ones are fatter. These are the Luminance and the Lightfast. They're fatter, and they don't always shove into a normal pencil sharpener. So the Swordfish Curve is my preference. The other lovely thing about it is it's got rubber grippers, so you don't get all the little teeth mark on your precious pencils, which is really good. So right, so we've got a little bit of context around the eye here. You know, we're going to go more into it, obviously, once we start building the fur. But here, you know, if you took a photograph of this now, this is looking like quite a nice eye. We haven't gone as dark as I want to go, but we've got a good context around, we've got the shape right, and we've got the size right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start working on the insidey bit. So, okay, so this is the Polychromos Dark Indigo, and I always start my eyes with the dark indigo. Sometimes people think that's a bit of an odd colour to start with, because obviously animal eyes are usually sort of like a browny orangey colour, and it's like, well, you know, where does this dark indigo come into it? Well, I like to use it for the pupil area as a very pale underpainting, if you like. So it goes on very lightly, and then when I put my black over the top, the black makes it much richer. So this eye has got quite a good pupil. The other eye is a little bit odd in that it's got all sorts of different lighting and everything. So this one's not a bad one to start with. Dogs have got round pupils, as we all know. And I'm just going to come in. Now, I'm going to use any stroke I can to get a smooth outcome on the film. I would suggest that you guys use use your pencil in a round motion. And that's because, you know, you're working on something that is spherical, it's round, and, you know, you just want to kind of follow that shape really. Again, you're using really, really, really light pressure, and you're trying to get an even coverage of the pencil on your surface, on the paper that you're using. Getting an even coverage on drafting film is really tricky. So, you know, hopefully you'll be finding it sort of relatively easy. Now, where there are little sort of highlights, spots of light, stuff like that, I'm going to miss those out, so I don't want to put those in. And I'm just going to bring this blue all the way up into the top bit here. There's this sort of catch light there has got almost like a straight line to it. And we're just going to bring in all of that in there. Very, 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 very gently. Okay, so it's almost like an inverted comma, isn't it? Like a quote mark. And then I'm going to bring some of this dark blue down into here as well. Okay, so I like to start everything with a really, really light. It's almost like drawing a ghost eye. It's almost like, you know, drawing something that's really knocked back and faded, because it just means that I can get everything in the right places and then start to build up the colour nice and slowly after that. So up at the top bit here, we can afford to go a little bit darker, because obviously this is all in the shadow. And around here as well, but this is where all of your layering and everything comes in. You know, you're going to get some really nice layers in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in some orange. Seems a tiny bit out of focus, right? Okay, let me just have a quick look. There we go. That better? Hopefully that's a bit better. It shouldn't be, the focus should stay the same. What might happen is you may well find that the drafting film doesn't always have like a beautiful crisp line around it. It can be a little bit fuzzy, but hopefully that's a little bit better there for you, a bit less fuzzy. So I'm going to use the Polychromos Terracotta, and I'm going to very gently just pull in some of the orange in the bottom down here. Again, really, really gently. Now, one of the things that you need to be careful of is moving your orange into the blue that we've put down, because we know that orange is sort of like a yellowy colour, and yellow and blue make green. So that's fine if you've got some greeny tinges in there, but this doesn't have greeny tinges, so we just need to be a little bit careful not to mix the colours. Okay, so that's in there like that. There's It's been blurry since we started. Oh, has it? Has anyone had a problem with the teeth mats? Oh, right, okay. Oh, right, okay, yes, so change your video quality, but it's definitely sharp on my screen. It's not blurry on mine. So anyway, right, okay. So now what we've got is we've got this, we've got the startings of a really nice eye. We've got the pupil in there, and we've got the colour coming in at the bottom. So now what I'm going to do is take the black. So again, this is the Polychromos, and we're working with black. And I'm just going to start to deepen the area around the eye. So I'm going to use more pressure. What you're not wanting to do is really, force the pencil onto the paper. You just want to use a little bit more pressure so you get a darker colour on there. And we're just going to darken up. Darken up all of this, and that's it. So then we can actually start to really get a feel for what this eye is going to look like. And we can darken up here as well, and then down into this bit here. So going in soft to begin with just means that if you make a mistake, you can easily take it back out. Just darkening all of that up. Again, just missing that little bit of a catch light there. There we go. And darken here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come in over the top of, in fact, I just need to make that little catch light a little bit. This is a Tombow eraser that I've got here. It's a tiny little eraser. It's brilliant. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this catch light here just a bit bigger. So, and then I'm going to come in with the black in here, and I'm just going to start to build the darkness in this area here. Again, I'm going to go quite gently, just getting in all of the shapes and everything like that in the correct places. Got that little pinprick of light there, and you can see on the picture that actually there's sort of like a little bit of his pupil that's slightly darker than the rest of the pupil, and we're just going to make that just a little bit darker so you can kind of see where he's looking. And then I'm just going to bring the black gently out over the top of the blue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put that's it. So gently over the top of the blue. Just be careful as well when you bring the black, sort of what we're going to try and do is sort of smoothly blend it into this orange bit here. Again, just be careful with your black into the orange because it can go a bit greeny. So sort of, just be a bit gentle with that. Again, so up here, this is quite dark. So again, using your roundy strokes. And we want to get it really quite nice and dark in there. So we talk about with coloured pencil layering gradually and layering softly. For me, where there's an area of real darkness, I like to get get all of the sort of the values in there, get the pigment down like I've done here, very very lightly. And then if it's a really dark area, I'll then go in with harder pressure just to get it dark quite quickly. So there might be a couple of layers of colour, and then go in with the black and get it really dark, because otherwise you're going to be there forever, just layering lightly. And sometimes it's just, you don't need to. You can just go straight in and make it dark. But I like to get sort of like the semblance of what it's going to look like in there first. Okay, and then I'm just going to bring a tiny bit of the black into here just to darken it very, very lightly. Okay, good. Right, so now what we're going to do is I've got the burnt sienna, This is, again, it's Polychromos burnt sienna. This is sort of like a, a reddy brown. And I'm just going to bring this in over the top of the layers that we've got there. I'm going to bring it in very lightly onto the bottom of the pupil area here, and then just bring it into down here where the eye is, where it's a little bit darker. But what we don't want to do is cover the orangey bits completely, so we want to leave some of those orangey bits showing. So it's a case of sort of like you can either do sort of lines like that, or you can just sort of like do these little roundy sketchy lines and just cover some of the orange but not all of it. So you end up with some of the orange showing through, and you end up with the brown going over the top of it, and it starts to look really quite nice and eye-like. You know, that's a technical term if nobody's heard of it, eye-like. Because you want your eyes to look glassy, you want them to look real. So having colour that's just sort of plotted in, and you've just got one load of colour in an eye, just doesn't look real, because eyes aren't just one colour. There, you know, there's all sorts of different sort of colours and everything in there. So this is starting to look quite nice in here. I'm then going to bring in a little bit of the dark sepia again, just on this side of his eye, because it is quite greyy. And I'm just going to bring it down the edge of this catchlight, which does have quite a sharp edge. You know, sometimes you want them to be a little bit more blurred, but this one's got quite a sharp edge. And then we'll just bring that little tiny bit into there. And then we're just going to bring the dark sepia. The dark sepia is a really good colour. It's quite a warm colour, but it's still relatively neutral. So using this over the top of other colours, you know, just to sort of darken those hues a little bit, it works really well. And then I can just bring this very slightly down into the bottom of his eye down here. That's looking okay. And then just, again, just roundy strokes all in there. Okay, and then I'm going to come back in again with the black, and I'm going to darken it up even more. So we're just going to darken this up so I can use a little bit stronger pressure still. Now, the good thing about the film that I'm working on, if I wanted it to be really dark and I wanted to put some, you know, I thought that I wanted to, you know, make it even blacker. I mean, this is working okay. I could just flip the film over and draw on the back of it. That's one of the real brilliant things about working on film. You can use both sides. So, okay. So that's all good, and then we just need to come in and just really blacken up this. Now I'm now going to use this is a Derwent Ivory Black. It's just another black, but it's a really good dark one. So I'm just going to use this as well on the top here, just to kind of really blacken everything up. These are the Derwent drawing pencils, are fantastic. They're really good actually, because they only come in a range of 24 colours. So they are, you know, cost effective. You can buy the whole set, and then they don't cost the earth. And they've got the most beautiful neutral, muted, earthy colours. And the black is just fantastic. It gives you a really, really, really good deep black. Okay. So now, if you've got more colours, if you haven't got more colours, just stick with your oranges and your browns. I'm just going to use, Vinnie, you need to keep quiet. I'm just going to use this, which is the Caput Mortem Violet, again a Faber Castell Polychromos one, and I'm just going to bring this into the bottom of the eye here, just to richen up a little bit of the colour. The dark red over the top of your oranges is a really, really good combination for eyes. I know we don't think of eyes as being red, but the dark red over the top of the orange gives it sort of almost like a burnt orange feel. And again, it just gives a little bit of something in there that works really well. And we're talking just tiny little sort of dots, little tiny bits of pigment in there, just to sort of pick up on some of those little nuances in the eyes there. And we've got a bit of, there we go. Okay. So that's okay, that's all right. Now I haven't put anything in this catch light. What I might do is just take probably a Polychromos white, something like that, and just bring in just a tiny little bit of the white there, just so that everything's covered. I'm just going to leave that there actually. Now I'm quite happy with that eye as it stands there. I think that looks okay. If you're using something like pastel matte, or if you're using a paper that's got a little bit of grain on it, what you could do is take something like a Polychromos warm grey 2, and you could just very gently come in and sort of lightly bring in a little bit of this over the top of your areas here. Now, because I'm working on the film, this isn't going to show up and it's not really going to have any effect, because working on the film, you can't really blend on the film, so it's a bit tricky. But if you're working on pastel matte, or you're working on something that's like a pastel paper or something like that, you know, just bringing in sort of like a warm grey or a cold grey just in over the top of your eye here is going to give you a really, really nice effect. But I'm happy with how that's worked out there. So hopefully, I've just seen a question which I will answer. What did I use to put the outline on the drafting film? I used this. So this is just my mechanical pencil. I don't know what weight it is, but it is that's what I use. I like to use it. It's just nice to use. So that's what I've used to put the outline down. But you could use anything. You can use anything that will rub out. Okay, so I'm going to crack on, and I'm going to start on the second eye. Yes, I've just answered those, and it's the Polydraw. It's the Polydraw 0.75. Right, on to the second eye. I'm just going to shunt that over there a little bit, and then you can see better. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing on this eye. I'm going to use my dark sepia Polychromos. I am going to come in and just start to work on the outside bit. I'm saying it's the outside. This is the sort of like the darkest bit of the eyelid here. So I'm just going to bring this in here. I've gone a little bit heavier there, which doesn't really matter, because what happens is when you start to draw and you start to work on a piece, on a new piece, so something that's completely fresh to your drawing board, I don't know whether you're the same as me, but I find I need a good half an hour, 2 hours, 3 days to get into a drawing, you know, because so say that, what's the drawing that I've just finished? I've just finished a horse on pastel matte, and I'd kind of put my whole, you know, heart and soul into this horse on the pastel matte. I then start to come and work on something like this on the drafting film. It's a completely different surface, totally different subject, and you kind of have to forget the muscle memory that you have from your last drawing. And it's very easy to get into, or to become a little bit despondent and a little bit sad. You know, when you start a new piece, you're like, I've forgotten how to draw. I don't know how to draw anymore. That's it. I've forgotten. It's just gone. And that's purely because you're used to certain techniques. You've been used to whatever it is on your drawing board. You know, you'll have got past the stage where you're just starting the initial bits. You know, you'll have finished it. So you've been working on the top layers, all of the tiny details. Then all of a sudden you come into a new drawing and you've got to start working on, you know, the tonal values, and you can't put any details in yet, and it's a completely different surface, and it's very strange. And you know, you really can feel like you've forgotten how to draw. So, you know, it's worth remembering that. and worth remembering that, you know, each new drawing is going to take you just a little while to get into it, which is why I've kind of come in a little bit darker on this side, because I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm doing now. Drawn that eye, this one's fine. As she goes wrong and everything goes to pot. Now this eye is a little bit different again, because we've got these little bits of hair around here, and what I would say with these little bits of hair is I would make sure that you've got the hair kind of drawn in around the eye. So don't draw the whole eye in and then try and put the hair over the top, because that's not going to work. I would put as much, or leave out as much of these little details as possible. And then the bits, the little hairs that go over the eyes, you can either completely ignore those, or you could use something like an embossing tool and just sort of like emboss the line in, or you could use like a slice tool or a craft knife or something afterwards and put that in, or you could use an eraser or something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore that little hair that's coming across the eye here. We're going to ignore that, but we're going to kind of take into account these little bits of hair here. So how do I deal with reference photos that have no clarity on the eyes? Oh gosh. And you know, if you're a portrait artist, you will get so many of those photos where they just there's just, you can't see anything. One of the things that I will do is I will try and lighten up the reference photo. So either in my phone or in Photoshop or something like that. There's a new, it's not new at all, but there's a free app, and it's called PhotoPad, which is quite good, and it's got some really good, very easy to use functions. So if you don't have Photoshop, that's a really good one to use, and you can just lighten up, see if you can lighten up your reference photo to see if you can kind of get any form of you know, detail, if you can see anything in there. What I would say not to do, if you've got a really poor photo, there's no details, you can't really see anything, I would say try not to put any detail in. I know when I first started drawing and taking commissions, if I was sent a poor photo, I would try my hardest to put as much detail in as possible, and it just doesn't work. Your best bet, if you've got a really poor photograph, is to just forget detail and go with tonal qualities. So go with darks, lights, mid-tones, and actually, you know, you're going to get something that looks really realistic if you get all of your tones, your tonal qualities correct. You know, so the problem will be when you're trying to draw something that your brain will want to take over, and your brain will say, no, I know what an eye looks like, and I'm just going to put a load of detail in because I'm an expert on eyes, and you know, and I can do it for you. And you have to try and shut your brain up because your brain does not know how to draw an eye. I can guarantee your brain does not know how to draw an eye. My brain thinks it knows how to draw an eye, and it's wrong every time. So you're better off just following your reference photo with your darks and everything, and your tonal qualities. That's the best thing to do, in my opinion. You know, and that also gives you a little bit of breathing space, you know, because you get the reference photo and the first thing you go is, oh God, oh my God, how on earth am I going to do this? It's horrible. You know, but if you know that you then don't have to do all of the details, it makes it a little bit easier. And of course you can say no. You can always say, I'm really sorry, but I'm not comfortable doing this. You know, and that's okay to do that. You know, and half the time, the most awful bit about telling somebody that you can't do it is making the decision to tell them that you can't do it. You know, once you've decided, then it becomes a lot easier. Right, okay, so I'm now going to just come in again with the dark indigo, Polychromos again. Now this eye is a bit of a funny one because it's not got a clear pupil. Again, this is where your brain tries to take over and goes, oh no, I can see a pupil in there, and I think we need to draw it there. And that's when you need to, you know, firmly put your brain back in its box and tell it to be quiet, because we can't see the pupil, and if we try to put the pupil in where we think it needs to go, it's probably not going to work out very well. So what we're going to do is we're just going to draw what's on the photograph. And this is where a lot of people will turn their photograph upside down. You know, they'll draw in a mirror or something like that, because it then confuses the brain, and the brain doesn't actually know what it is looking at then, and then it you know, you can keep it quiet. So I mean, I'm talking as if your brain is a whole other person. My brain's a whole other person. It's got a mind of its own. So all we're doing is we're just coming in and we're just drawing the dark bits in here again. You may have drawn some sort of like shape bits in here. And it might look a bit odd to begin with, but honestly, once you start to get a little bit more of the detail in, it will look okay, she says, crossing her fingers. Okay, so then again, I'm going to try and keep those, you know, little catch lights free. I think I've just drawn over one, but I can take that out. It's not a problem. Still using really nice light pressure. And then little Vinnie boy. He's a funny old thing. Well, he's not old. He's only 9 months, bless him. All right. Okay, so in here as well, I'm not going to do any blue down there, but basically I've got kind of the shapes in there that that I need. Then I'm going to come in with the am I going to come in with the black? No, I'm going to go straight in with this darker. I'm not going to use the orange on this one, I don't think. I'm going to use the burnt sienna, and I'm just going to come in down in this area down here. I know it doesn't all look like it's the burnt sienna, but in fact I think I'm going to come over into some of that blue in there as well, and I'm just going to make this little bit a bit browny, and in here as well. So these sorts of eyes where they're a little bit in the shadows are quite tricky, because you still got to get them looking sort of quite nice and eye-like, but because it's not a clear-cut pupil orange bit, they are a little bit harder to do. So in with the black. So I'm not going to go in really, really hard here, because these shapes are still quite soft. I need to use my Tombow a little bit, I think, just to get some of that bit of the highlight in there, and that one there. I can make them a little bit bigger, and then you know, I can always make them smaller. Let's grab a bit of tea. Oh, hi, we've got Jason. I've just been looking at my screen. Hi, Jason. How nice. How nice that you've joined me. I'm going to be joining yours tomorrow, I think. Yeah, that's... oh, I'm so pleased you've joined me. It's... I must admit, it's so nice to have, you know, friends in the art world. It really is. It really is lovely. You know... So, yeah, if anybody wants to do another live stream tomorrow, Jason is drawing, I think he's drawing a tiger's eye with pastel, and I would highly, highly recommend that. I've already got my my timer set, and my biscuits all there ready to eat whilst I'm watching. So again, I'm just coming in here with the black very lightly. I still want to use this quite lightly, and I know it's a bit of a tricky one, but you know, it's quite a good one actually for sort of more seasoned artists, because you know, we do get photos like this for you know, to do with pet portraits and everything, and it you know, it's quite good to sort of see how other people tackle them, I guess. So again, we can just come down in here. And you can make an eye look really real, even without having sort of like the pupil, the iris, blah, blah, blah. You know, you can still make it look really real. But your best bet really is to follow your photo and just follow sort of like those tonal values, and just build it up really nice and lightly. So if you start nice and slowly and just build up lightly, you're more likely to get something that looks eye-like. There's that technical term again. So I have all of these technical terms up my sleeve. Half of them are all made up. So we can just make that tiny bit smaller. Okay. And I'm now going to do, the other thing as well is with catch lights, we always think catch lights are bright white. So a lot of the time when we put anything in that's got some sort of a highlight, we leave the highlight bright white, and the highlight generally never is bright white. So you know, but we always see it as that, which is a bit odd, but that's how it works. So now what am I going to use? Couple of different greys here. So this is the warm grey 4, which I'm just going to bring into this area here. I'm going to have to darken it up a little bit as well. I'm going to leave that as a highlighty bit, and I'm just going to bring that warm grey into there too. And then I'm going to bring the Caput Mortuum Violet in, and I'm just going to bring in some of this in here just to richen this up slightly. And this is all about the layering, getting these layers in, and then I'm going to do a very, very, very light layer just over this bit here. Probably need to just darken that up a bit, otherwise he's going to look like he's blind in one eye. And we'll go back to the black, and we'll just start to darken up some of these areas in here. Darken up. So this is quite dark up here. You can start to increase your pressure a little bit. Let's bring that down in there. So I apologise for any background noise. I have told the children to be quiet, but they're usually quite good, but I can't expect them to be quiet forever. Right, and then I need to really darken up and here as well. So it is a funny little eye, but you know, we get the gist of what we're supposed to be doing. I'm just going to come over here again and just darken it up slightly. So it is actually really quite dark, is this area, but it's still light. And that's what I mean about getting your tonal values correct. You know, and actually getting your darks in really helps. So where your darkest areas are, if you can get them as dark as you possibly can, then you know how light you need to go with your highlights and your midtones. So that's not so bad. And then I'm just going to increase a little bit around here so we kind of get a bit of pupil-y type. Just make this one a little bit smaller. Okay, so that's not so bad. Get a bit of roundness on there. And then darken that up a little bit as well. So, yeah, so that's not so bad. It's sort of similar-ish to the eye, and then I'm just going to run a little tiny weeny bit of the orange in there, and then just darken this very slightly again. In there. So it's just a case of you know, sort of working on it slowly and just building up those tones. So this side of the eye, it might look a little bit weird at the moment, but this side of the head is darker anyway. You know, it's in shadow. So once we get all of the fur in around, it's going to look more realistic, because, and that's one of the things that can kind of throw you as well. You know, once you get sort of, you put an eye in and it looks really dark, you know, and then you think, oh, I've done it too dark, so I'll make it lighter. And then once you start to put all of the fur and everything around it, the hair and everything, and get all of those shadows and stuff in, then you start to see, oh, actually, do you know what, it should be darker. So you're better just to sort of put all of your tones in and get all of the darks and shades and everything in there correctly, then work on all of the fur around it as you can kind of come to it, because this all is all in shadow, so there's more light here, dark here. The same when you're drawing light coloured animals. You know, if you're drawing a white animal on white paper, what will happen most definitely is you'll start to put the colour in and you will be like, this is just too dark, it's just too dark, and you'll try and make it lighter, and then you'll end up with something that's too light. You know, so always kind of trust your instincts, but just don't forget that something that looks like it should be white never really is, and things that look like they're a highlight, you know, generally are highlights, but they're never, you know, or half the time they aren't like a really bright white. So I'm okay with that eye, because when we come back to working on it a little bit later, see if I can smooth that out slightly, then, you know, when I put all of the shadows and everything in, it's going to look okay. I know it looks a bit strange at the moment. We've got one bright eye and one dark one, but you know, it's to do with the photo and everything. Right, so I am now going to move on to the most exciting bit, which is the nose. I'm just going to double check. Let's put all my pencils away quickly, and I'm just going to double check the focus on that. Just have a look at the focus on that. Okay, good. So that's all okay. Right, so we're going to start on the his little nose. Actually, that's a complete lie. It's not a little nose at all. It's massive. Vincent has the biggest nose, and it's like a proper boop nose. You can really get hold of it and sort of honk it. Yeah, it's a very, very good nose. I'm just trying to find, oh, here we go. It's a really good nose. Actually, I just need to change the angle of my camera slightly, just so I can get in there, and that's okay. So, dog noses. Hands up, who is terrified of dog noses? And this is one whopping nose. So dog noses are scary. They're not scary at all, but they can be scary, because all you see on this dog nose is, oh my goodness, I've got to put all of that detail in. I've got to go, you know, I've got to put all of these little tiny bits, crevices, all of that type of stuff in. And you really don't. You don't have to put tons and tons of detail in to make something look realistic. What you've got to remember is, and I'm just going to move this back up again. I apologise for this. But what you've got to remember is that dogs' noses, you have to get the angles correct. So the angles of the eye, if you put a pencil across your reference photo, whatever, is the same angle as the top of the nose, is the same angle as the top of your nostrils, bottom of your nostrils, bottom of the nose, and the mouth. If you have a photo where you have the angle of the eye and then you come down and the top of the nose is okay, but then the nostrils go like that, your dog is sniffing in the photograph. Okay, so that means that when you come to draw your nose, it'll look fine in the photograph, but in your drawing, once you've finished it, the nose is going to look out, the nose is going to look wrong. And the only reason is because the dog has just slightly moved his nose because he's sniffing or something like that. So that's one of the things always to remember, is to just check your angles. If you're using a photograph and the dog's nose is sniffing, my recommendation would be to kind of just pull the nose back, just redraw it slightly. This one's fine. It's all sort of in good angles. Everything's working okay. So that's the first thing to remember. Second thing is that it's kind of two halves. I mean, obviously each dog's nose is individual and unique, but you tend to have this little sort of line, definitely down the bottom bit. Sometimes it comes up a little bit further, but that can help as well. You know, just getting this bit of a line in can sort of like give you a really good idea as to, you know, the halves of the nose. What may happen as well is that you may sort of have traced in your outline or drawn your outline or anything like that, and you may come to it and you may look at it and go, oh, hang on a second, this bit here, oh, I've got that too wide, that's too wide, I need to change my nostrils, I need to bring them in a little bit. And then you start to redraw, but then what happens is when you start to bring all of your pigment in your colour, as soon as you put dark in this area here, it draws those nostrils together. It makes this space seem narrower. So you're always better just to kind of leave your nostrils as you've originally put them in, because everything will change. It will all look very different once you've started to bring in this pigment in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to start again with my dark sepia. And I'm just going to sort of sketch in very lightly sort of some of the area of the top of the nose here. Now, when you look at the photograph, the nose is actually coming towards you. It's not just a big round nose flat on the page, it's coming towards you. And you've got this little bit here, which is almost like it's more sort of fine skin rather than the actual nose bit. The actual nose bit sort of starts around here. And if you can kind of show that this is what's happening, your nose is then going to look like it's coming out of the page rather than it just being a flat nose, you know, sat on the paper. So bringing in these little areas, bringing in these little bits to start with is going to help you with the perspective. It's going to help you to kind of you know, understand what's going on. Again, it's to do with your brain. You know, if your brain can understand what's going on, then it makes it a little bit easier. So just sort of sketching in the little bits of hair on the top, this fine skin on the top. The other thing as well that I find really useful when I'm drawing fur, eyes, not eyes particularly, but you know, fur and skin, is to kind of visualize what that might feel like. And that then really helps me with what the, you know, how my strokes should be on the paper. So I'm envisaging this bit here to be very, very velvety. So I'm wanting my pencil strokes to be, you know, really nice and soft. I don't really want there to be any lines or anything like that in there. I just want it to be velvety soft. So that's kind of what I'm doing there. And then you've got all sorts of like little bits of hair and stuff coming in there, which, you know, if you kind of, you don't need to draw them in, but you can kind of put the textury bits in there, you know, just to kind of indicate that there's some hair and stuff going on in there. And just doing this little bit here at the top is just going to make the nose that bit smaller. If we didn't put this bit in, it would be very tempting to try and bring all of this nose up and start the knobbly bits up at the top here. You know, so just helping yourself by putting these sort of like little landmarky bits in that are going to, you know, we know that the knobbly bits kind of start here now. So that's all good. And then we're just going to very gently bring in some of that colour into there. And you'll see also from your photo that there's all sorts of different lumps and bumps and you know, the shading and everything on the nose. It's all very different. So that the shading on this side of the nose is quite different to this side. He's actually looks like he's got like a bit of a dint on this side. It's probably where I've been tweaking it too hard. That's a lie. I don't tweak his nose hard. And this side is a little bit rounder, you know, so kind of bringing that in as well, but not so much that you end up with like a big dip in the nose. So you kind of got to be a little bit careful with that as well. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to bring in a little bit of the shading. Now, if you look at your reference photo and you squint your eyes, you will be able to see where the really dark areas are and where the really light areas are. The details will kind of disappear. So we know that the really dark areas are the nostrils. They're the darkest areas probably in the whole picture. the bit in between, this line here, and then we've got a couple of sort of like dark areas in here. And then we've got a little bit of dark here and a little bit of dark there. So if we make a start with just starting to build these nostril areas up, what I don't want to do is just fill in the nostrils and make them all black, because I want to be able to get a sense of perspective again. I want to get a sense that they're going backwards into the dog's head. So I want to use my pencil to be able to create some sort of like soft edges into that black and build them up gradually. So I'm going to start on this edge here, and I'm just going to bring in, I'm just thinking, is this the best colour to use, or should I use, no it is, I'll use this colour. And I'm just going to bring in some very, very gentle strokes just to start to get an idea of where these shadowy bits are. And again, I'm going to use little round strokes, and I don't mind if those strokes show up. So I don't mind if you can see circles in those pencil strokes, because that is going to be, or that's going to really help you get the texture of the dog's nose, so that you don't have to sit there going, oh, little round circle, oh, little round circle. You don't have to do that because you've already got part of that texture in. So, and this is the bit where I was talking about where I want to get this sense of perspective, that this is a rounded edge. So I'm using round strokes, but then I'm also curving my pencil round into and making almost like a lip of the nose, so that we can see that this is starting to become an actual, 3D object, if you like. So I would suggest you don't sharpen your pencils. You keep them, I don't know whether you can see that, I'm starting to get a nice sort of like smooth edge to this pencil. It's not sharp, I'm starting to get like a nice flat end to it. Because then we can get some really, really nice soft pigment in there. So I'm using these roundy strokes, and then I'm also coming in and round the nose. So we're starting to, almost like the eye, we're kind of building outside the nose first. And then we can, we can really start to work on the dark areas once we've kind of got an idea as to where everything is going to go. So we've got this bit there, and then I'm just going to a little Tombow out. So if you've got an eraser, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of whisk out this bit here. And the other thing to remember as well is that this shape that I've drawn here is not just a black shape. It's all part of something. So where the nose comes down here, it doesn't stop there. It keeps going. So this is where the nostril comes down to, round here. So it's really, really important to look at the structure of whatever it is that you're drawing. The more you understand an animal, the better, really. If you know horses or if you know dogs, you know if you've got something slightly that's not quite right. And I'm going to be, I'll add some more colour at some point, but I just want to get these tonal qualities in here first. So we're going to come down this side down here. Again, we don't just want flat colour, we want it to be round. So it's almost like I'm drawing over, on the nose, I'm drawing round it because I want this to look round. So using my pencil in that sort of roundy motion to get the edge of that nose in there. And then we can come into here as well. This is all a little bit blue, so I'm not going to, and quite light as well, so I'm not going to, goodness knows what, I think it's got a running nose here. I did use my photography skills aren't particularly brilliant. I did use a flash on this, so it's not the best, not the best reference photo, that's for sure, but it's, it's okay. So the other thing as well is if you look at your reference photo, you'll see that there's some really nice texture and ridges and everything going on in the nose you know, and the texture kind of changes a little bit. Now, you know, if you want to, you can go all out and just spend forever drawing all of the little ridges in the nose and really, really get into it. But if you're like me and, you know, you're just a bit lazy, then it's easier just to sort of like draw a semblance of, you know, so I would much prefer to draw something and let somebody figure out what it is that I'm doing, rather than, you know, trying to get every single tiny little bit of detail in. I mean, sometimes it's really nice to get loads of detail in. You know, if you're drawing sort of like a study of an eye, or you're drawing a study of a nose or something like that, then yeah. But, you know, if you're drawing a portrait, actually, you know, you don't have to get every tiny little bit of detail in. It's you need to get the character of the animal, you need to get the look and feel of the animal, you know, so those are the most important things. So again, just coming down here, really nice soft pressure still. And then let's just look at this little bit of the nose here. Get this bit in there. We can darken all of this up later, no problem. And then again, if you look at your reference photo, you've probably got some lines that are coming around like this. And then this is all a little bit smoother, so I can just go to smooth in there. Again, this is smooth, but this is a dent. This is a bit of, you know, it goes in. So again, you know, using your pencil on a curve is going to help whoever's looking at it to understand that this is, you know, there's all sorts of things going on with this nose. And then we can just go into some of these like little lines in here as well. Okay, so let's now just quickly look at doing this middle bit. So this is quite dark, and there is quite a lot of texture and everything in here. So again, I'm going to be using these roundy circles to get that texture in. So you can't always see all of them, but there's, you know, a few that you can kind of, you know, highlight, and, you know, they're not all of the same size, but there's a definite texture. And this is the first layer, and then we can start to add more layers over once we've got a good idea of where everything's sitting. So I'm just going to increase my pressure very slightly into the middle bit there where it's the darkest. And then we just come down. Can't really see half of the detail in here, but you know, it's more dark than anything else, but we do still know that there's some texture in there. And then I can come in with my black in a bit. So that, you know, noses do take a while, and once you kind of get into the swing of things and you start to you know, find your way of drawing a nose, then they do become much easier. I can remember when I first started you know, drawing dogs and animals, the noses just took me forever, and they would be the most frustrating thing out of the whole piece, and they would be the thing that I dreaded the most. You know, because it was so hard to get it looking nose-like, you know, but once you kind of learn a few little sort of tips and tricks and stuff like that, you know, it just becomes easier. And you know that even if you do something and it doesn't look particularly amazing, you know that once you've sort of added a few more bits and pieces, that actually it's going to look okay. And I think that's the same with everything, really. You know, you kind of get to know that something's going to look a bit horrible before it looks nice. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, you know, I used to have little things stuck on my drawing board that, you know, to remind me to keep going, to remind me that things look horrible, you know, to remind me that, you know, I need to use really light pressure, all of that type of stuff. You know, and that really helped, because you get into a bit of a flap about something, and then you kind of look up and you read your little note that says, you know, Bonnie, it's going to look horrible for a while. You know, but it will look better, and then you're like, oh yeah, I remember, yeah, it does look horrible for a while, oh yeah, it'll be all right, you know, and then you can kind of carry on. So writing little odd notes to yourself kind of really does help. So some people would go straight in with the nostrils. I've kind of left them a little bit and done on the outside instead. Jason, can I send a link for this chat that we so excited to see Jason? Oh yay, oh yes, Jason, we should stream together. That sounds very exciting. I don't know how we'd do that, but that sounds really exciting. I'm definitely up for that. I don't know how we'd do it, but it would be quite fun. Yeah, that would be really funny. Yes, so right, so we've got kind of the bottom bit of the nose, and then I'm going to start to just bring in a little bit onto the top of the nose here. I'm still using exactly the same pencil, and I'm just going to now just be a touch lighter and not kind of put too much colour in, and just bring a little bit of the, so you can see more of that texture going in on the nose there. Now, I'm not saying that if you know, I'm not saying that drawing every single tiny little detail is wrong, because it's not. I mean, there are some incredible artists out there who do the hyperrealism, you know, and every single bit of the drawing is perfection and, you know, looks like the photograph. And I have massive, massive respect for those artists, because it takes a huge amount of skill and patience to be able to create something like that. I'm just far too lazy to be able to do anything like that. So it's not cutting corners, it's just finding alternative ways to be able to just, you know, put something down on the paper that kind of hopefully looks like what you want it to look like. I've always been that sort of person, trying to find easy ways of doing things. You know, I used to do, I used to be an art worker. I used to work on Macs and create, you know, artwork and stuff like that. And I would always work out a system whereby I could do things much quicker. So I could, you know, I learned all of the quick keys on the keyboard, all of that type of stuff, you know, to make everything not substandard, but, you know, a little bit quicker and more efficient. I was very efficient. I'm not sure I'm still very efficient. So again, so this is, you know, it's quite nice just sitting, drawing circles on a dog's nose. You know, it's just be nice and light. You know, when we come to this area here, we start to just lose that texture slightly. So we can just bring in a little bit more of a smoother texture in there. And then we can just move on in there. There's a bit of a highlight in there as well, which we can kind of just leave slightly so that we can see it's a highlight. And then this is maybe a little bit darker. And then this is quite blue over here, but I'm still going to just bring in a touch of this. So we've got a little bit of those bits there. Okay, so now we've got a nose that it's sort of browny looking. We're going to add some colour and everything into there, and I'm now just going to start building on the nostril areas here. I'm going to bring some blue in and some black in and some Payne's grey. Yeah, maybe use that Payne's grey. Right, so I'm going to use my black now, and I'm going to start to bring in the nostril areas. Okay, so I've already got this nice area, this nice soft areas. It's sort of like a little lip that's coming in there, and I'm going to there's some like little creasy bits that come up into that onto that lid of the nose there, and I'm just going to add to the little creasy bits where I need to. Add to sort of like some of the darker areas here where I need to. So this is a little bit in shade, so I can add a little bit of the black into here in the shade. Maybe need to add a bit of blue in there as well. So I know I'm not using a huge amount of colours in this. If I was doing this as somebody's portrait, I may well use more colours, but I don't want to overcomplicate things, so I'm just going to use the black really. So this here is all black, so I'm going to go in with quite hard pressure. I'm going to try and get it as even as I possibly can and just fill in this area. Now I have a serious issue in filling in even small areas like this with one colour. I find it really hard. I just find it a real struggle to be able to just put one colour in. I don't know why. I'm like doing it in tiny little bits. I mean, really, I should just be going, right, just get the white colour in. But I end up doing it in little tiny bits. It's very strange. So, but this is just black, and it's quite a good shape actually, because we've got a line here and a line there, and then it's all black inside it. Now I am a big I use black a lot, and I know quite a few other artists don't. I know when I first started drawing, I was told, oh, don't use black, don't ever use black, it looks really flat. And using black on its own does look flat, but using it with other colours can make it, it's black, and if something's black, it's black. So the other thing I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put some of the dark indigo over the top of that, and I'm going to bring some of the dark indigo into this area here as well. So where these areas down here are a little bit dark, just start to bring in a little bit of that colour into there, and in here as well, again using those roundy strokes. And I'm going to just bring in some of that dark indigo over the top of that black there. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side. So I hope this is all going well. I hope you're enjoying drawing this, and hopefully noses, if you were a little bit scared of noses, hopefully these sort of little techniques and tricks and everything are going to help you feel a little bit less scared of drawing noses, because I mean noses are one of the things that I love, really love. Textured fur is one of my favourite things to do. I love to get stuck into textured fur, crazy curly fur, that type of stuff. It's just I just love it, absolutely love it, because you can just get lost in it, and you can kind of plan it in your head and work out how you're going to do it, and you can use all different techniques, and it's all really fun. So I mean, I love doing the textured fur and curly fur on the drafting film, because I can use all of the subtraction techniques that I love so much. So using the slice tool and the erasers and everything to get all of that lovely texture, and it's yeah, I'm honestly in my element when I'm drawing textured fur. I love it. Okay, so again, you can see I'm getting a little bit braver with my black here, filling it in quite quickly. Again, that's due to muscle memory. I've already done one, so I'm kind of, I feel a little bit more comfortable with that. I'm going to just bring it down into here. I'm using quite firm pressure because, it's black. Okay, and then I'm going to use the blue over the top of that again. And then I'm just going to bring the blue into here as well. And just start to work on these areas around the nose here, because what we now want to start to do is to actually bring in a little bit more form, so to make it look like it's really coming out of the, coming out of the page. So back onto the black. Oh, Vinnie, you have got the most amazing little nose. Bless him, he's such a funny dog. He's I don't know, I've never had a dog like him. He's just weird. He makes these funny squeaky noises all of the time, and then you look at him and it's like he'd been whistling, and then you look at him and he pretends it wasn't him. He's just a funny little dog. Well, he's not little at all. He's absolutely gigantic, but he is funny. Okay, so I'm going to come in and just start to darken up this middle bit here, again with the black. And I'm going to add a little bit of blue as well in there at some point. Again, you know, just working on putting in this bit of texture in there as well. Now, if you want to leave some little highlighted bits out, you can. Or we can put those in at a later date with something like a slice or a razor or something. If you're using really smooth paper, it probably is better to get your highlights in pretty early and to keep them you know, free from pigment, because then, you know, they're going to stay nice and clear and white. So okay, so coming here, we're going to just sort of connect this little bit of the nose up with this middle bit here. So he probably has got a line that runs all the way through, and it just looks really dark. I'm just going to bring in a little bit of that. So it's all about shapes, really. It's all about shapes and shading. You know, if you can get your shading right and your darks and lights right, then, you know, you're away. It doesn't really, I mean, I could have done this nose bright purple, and as long as I got my shading right, you know, and my tonal values right, it would look real. You know, the colour is secondary, really. You know, obviously, if you're drawing somebody's dog and it's a portrait, then you know, you do need to get those colours correct. But you know, don't if you're going to forgo anything, then it should be colour over your tonal values. Your tonal values are, in my opinion, the most important thing. You know, because that's what's going to make your portraits look really real. Okay, so let's just come down. Actually, let's just work on the top of the nose a little bit. So I'm going to go back to using my dark indigo. Now, the colours that you use in noses and all of that type of stuff will depend on, obviously, the animal, but it will also depend on the lighting that you've got in your photograph. And you're going to have all sorts of different colours reflecting off things like noses and you know, the different fur and all of that. So you know, and you can choose whether or not you put in those colours. You know, sometimes you might be drawing a white dog that's sitting in a patch of grass or something like that, and if you're just drawing the white dog and not the grass, it may look a little bit different once you've kind of taken it out of context of the photograph. You know, so if you've got a white dog with a great big green patch on its chest, it might look a little bit odd. However, if you've drawn the background in as well, and you've drawn some grass in there, well then, you know, that would make sense that the dog has got some of that reflecting on its chest, so then it would look okay. So it's about really looking at your reference photo and deciding, you know, what colours you're going to add or keep, and what colours you're going to kind of discard and not bother using. So I'm just going to have some more tea. Oh, Jason, you're so kind. I'm blushing here. I have to say, you are one of my absolute heroes, and that's really sweet of you to say that. The reason that I can talk and draw at the same time is because I just like to talk. I just like chatting, and that's the problem, you see, with the live feeds. I just go on forever. And that's why I've said to Evie, please, can you you know, ring me and tell me to stop, because otherwise I'd be here all night. We'd just keep going. You know, I do quite like to chat and draw at the same time. It's, you know, and tell people what I'm doing. It's something I quite like to do. What's Evie saying here? Do you worry about perspective? Smaller circles at the base of the nose, bigger ones at the snouty end? No, don't worry about any of that. No, because what's going to happen is we're actually going to get the perspective with the shading and everything. Now, there may well be some, I might do it subconsciously, and there may well be some circles in here that are slightly bigger than the ones at the back, and that's probably just a subconscious thing. So if you're copying from a photograph, you're probably going to do that anyway. but the perspective will come from your shading and all of that type of stuff as well. So, you know, yes, I guess it is important, but for me it's just about the texture really. So I'm just going to bring in my putty eraser very quickly. This one is I'll show you the box. This is the Faber Castell one, and I find this is the best one. It's a kneadable eraser, goes into all sorts of weird shapes. It's brilliant. I love this eraser, and you just sort of knead it, put it into a bit of a shape. And what I want to do is I just want to bring in a few like little highlighty bits, and I'm just going to sort of like dab it onto the nose and just lift it off, so I can actually add a little bit of texture in there as well, just by using that kneadable eraser. So I really enjoy I really like using subtraction techniques. I know that many of the people who follow my tutorials are like, oh my God, she's putting the pigment in, she's taking it out, she's putting it in, she's taking it out. And I said on one of my live streams, it is like doing the hokey cokey with me. You know, you're putting the pigment in, you're taking it out, in, out. You know, but actually, you can draw with an eraser. It's a really, really nice technique. You know, you can add in little bits of texture, and then it's kind of done. You know, you don't have to worry about you know, putting all of the details and everything in, because you can just a few little dabs and that's it. It's finished. You know, so it's a good. I really like it as a technique. And it's one that I use a lot, and I use it on the both different types of paper that I use. So the film and the pastel mat, I use the subtraction techniques. You know, putting the pigment in and then lifting it out. So you're almost adding extra layers by taking you know, pigment out. It's yeah, I like to do that. Okay, so this nose is coming on. It's looking all right. Again, we're still building quite slowly. I'm going to bring a little bit of this dark indigo into the top here. I keep on looking at my messages just to see if there's anything in there. So I don't even know how long we've been going. We've probably been here 3 days already, and I wouldn't know. Okay, so this blue in here, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of blue into there. I do want to get onto a little bit of fur, but you know, if anybody don't feel you have to stay with me if you're getting bored. If there's something better on telly. So again, just getting the making sure that I get the shape of this nose in here as well. But the yeah, I think once you kind of get into it, dog noses they're quite fun to do actually. They are quite fun. Okay, so then I'm going to go back and use the black a little bit more and just darken up this bit here so that we get a little bit more of a difference. And where we can see the texture, we can just start to outline it a little bit, and you can start to bring to the fore some of those more creasy bits at the top of the end of the nose there. You don't have to, but and again, I'm just going to go harder with my pressure in here so I get a more dark. I'm working on film, so I'm kind of limited to the amount of layers I can put in, but you know, it seems to be okay. And like I say, I could flip it over and go in on the back. I won't do, but I could do if I felt that I really needed a lot more depth. You know, and this is where you could really go to town with your details if you wanted, but you know, it's just the look and the look and feel really I'm after. And again, just darkening up in there. And then round this edge around here. Starting to bring a little bit more form into this bottom bit of the nose. And then do a little bit more in here, and then we'll just bring in some colour into these areas here. I need a bit of blue in there, I think. So it's not looking so bad. So we're wanting it nice and smooth. You know, we're wanting a nice smooth texture in there. And again, this is sort of a bit darker down here as well. So this is where I kind of get into the swing of things and I'm like, yeah. So I apologise if I'm drawing a bit fast. And it's quite sketchy with me as well. It's more about sort of getting those values in rather than being really careful about where I'm putting my details. I think anybody who knows me anyway knows that I'm not very careful. I tend to hold my pencil really close to the edge as well, the end of the pencil, and I do this because I find I've got far more control over where I'm putting my pigment. So it's if I want to go with really hard pressure, I can. If I want to go with really soft pressure, I can. You know, I just have much more control over it. I'll sometimes kind of do that type of stuff, but it tends to be I've got a really good grip on the pencil, and I hold it quite tight as well, which I'm not sure is a good thing. But you know, it just means that I've got total control over it. And I think, you know, that's why I really love drawing quite detailed stuff, is because it's the only area in my life that I have any semblance of control over. I've got no control over anything else. Everything else is complete and utter chaos. So yeah. And I think that's why my drawing is so important for me. You know, I have to draw every day to be able to keep saying I have to draw every day. You know, it doesn't stress me out or anything. If I'm stressed out, then the best thing for me to do is to draw. So let's whisk that away a little bit. So this is looking all right, actually. Vincent, your nose is looking okay. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a little bit of blue in. Now, I was thinking I might use some... Oh, here we go. I'm going to use a little bit of light cobalt blue. If you haven't got light cobalt blue, it doesn't matter, but I'm just going to bring in a little bit of this. This is the Luminance light cobalt blue. The Luminance pencils are just unbelievably beautiful pencils. They are absolutely fantastic. I love them. I mean, I am an ambassador for Caran, so I'm kind of a little bit biased. I'm also half Swiss, so again a little bit biased because they're Swiss made, but they are absolutely beautiful pencils. They're expensive, but they are worth every single penny. So I'm just using a little bit of the cobalt blue in here, just in these highlighty areas here. One thing to be careful of is if you've got a really dark area and then you put a light one into it, just be careful you don't then pull the dark into the light. So, you know, try and keep your pencil out of the dark if you possibly can, because otherwise you can start to kind of get things a little bit muddy. Now we need to go in here again, don't we, and just darken up this area here. So let's just darken up this. And I did a video the other day actually on the colours that I used for the horse that I've just drawn, because a lot of people ask me the reasons why I choose certain colours over others and certain pencils over others, and why I combine certain pencils and all of that type of thing. And the reason that I'll usually pick up a particular pencil is usually because of the feel of it, how it feels on the paper, because they all feel very different. I'm a very tactile person. I'm very feely. So when I talk to somebody, you know, I talk about how I feel. How do you feel about this? Blah blah blah. So everything to me is about feel and touch. So the feel of a pencil is very important to me, how it kind of lays down on the surface that I'm drawing on, and that is one of the main criteria for choosing one pencil over another, is how it actually feels. This is quite nice, isn't it, how this little bit of shadow's worked out? Quite like that. Must not touch that because I'm quite happy with how that's worked out. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, so yes, it's about the feel. So the Luminance pencils feel very, very, very smooth, almost like drawing with sort of like a buttery, well, like butter, like drawing with butter. You know, they're very smooth. The Polychromos are a harder pencil, and they don't, on the film, they don't blend quite as nicely. But they're really good for details. So you know, it's all dependent really on what it is that you're wanting to achieve, I suppose. You know, and how they feel in your hand. Some people don't like the Luminance at all. Some people swear by them. You know, a lot of people love the Prismas because, again, they're very smooth pencils, you know, beautiful colours. You know, a very underrated pencil actually, because many people sort of poo-poo them because their light fast quality is not amazing, but actually they're not bad. They're not, you know, some of them are poor, but then some of the Polychromos are poor. So, you know, they're again, they're a good pencil, and it's how they feel for you really. So what I'm doing here is I'm just sort of sketching in some sort of like little, I don't know, knobbly bits. I'm aiming for the look rather than it being identical to the photo. So I just need a little bit more black in there. I do sit back quite a bit as well, and I like to look at the image as a whole, just to kind of make sure that everything's working in the right way. And then we probably need to darken this up quite a lot, but it's not bad. It's all right. It's definitely Vinnie's nose. And so we just darken up this bit here. I find it much easier to darken gradually. I think one of the things that I think coloured pencil artists in particular find really, really hard is going dark enough in your darks. And something that I kind of, when I'm coaching people and helping people with their coloured pencil work, you know, a lot of people, when I critique their work, I'm like, right, you know, you need to go darker in your darks, and it's terrifying. I'm like, well, I can't possibly, I find it really hard to go dark. And one of the things that I kind of encourage people to do is to keep going back to something and gradually making it dark. So you go in here and you put a little bit in, and then you go in over here and you draw a little bit more, and then you go back here and you make it a little bit darker. So it's not as scary as doing it all at once. But it is so important to get your darks dark enough, because, you know, getting that lovely contrast and everything is vital. It really is vital. Okay, so I'm going to use this blue just over here. This is just a little bit too light. It's just slightly in the wrong place, but it doesn't matter. That's another of my I have a very laissez-faire attitude on everything really. You know, everything will be right, it'll be fine, you know, and it usually is. It's usually fine. I don't tend to really worry about stuff, although I have to say I got really, 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 really stressed at the supermarket today. We went and did a shop, and I had to go and get some stuff for my mum and dad, and we had to queue. And we saw one of my neighbours, and he was like, "Where's your mask?" And I was like, "I haven't got a mask." And then we had to queue, and then they'd shut half of the aisles in the shop, and I was like, "I just don't want to be here. And it's not, you know, I'm obviously worried like everybody else is, but I just it got me a little bit. I don't, you know, I just wanted to go and do my shop and get out, and I couldn't. I was stuck queuing all the way around the blooming car park. Nightmare. Anyway, so I just bought loads of biscuits, and then they said, "Oh, you're only allowed three packs of biscuits." And I have to say there were tons and tons of biscuits on the aisle, and I was like, "Well, I want more than three packs anyway." So we shoved 3 in with my mum's shopping, so that was all right. We got 6 packs of biscuits. So. And I have to say, I have not been hoarding toilet roll, just in case you think I have. I haven't. It's just biscuits. Biscuits are very important to me. And I managed to get some more tea, so that was That was a big relief. Right, okay, so I'm now going to just come in the top here. I'm not going to do much more on this nose. I could spend another, I don't know, 4 days doing this, but I'm not going to. I'm quite happy with how this nose has turned out. I think this nose has turned out quite nicely, actually. I'm pretty happy. So I'm just going to pull him up a little bit so you can see eyes and nose. I'm just going to bring this back to here so I can see him and put him into focus. Enjoying your nose, Vincie. Oops. There we go. That looks all right. That's looking okay. Excellent. Oh, no, I don't. Well, I know, but I've got hand sanitizer and all of that type of stuff, and but no, I haven't got a mask. And I know I probably should have one, but I'll get a pair of pants out and make a mask with them. Right, so we're going to start doing some hair now. I don't know how many hours I've been going. What time is it? It's 5:30. Blimey. Right, okay. So we're going to start doing a little bit of hair. And I think what we'll do is we'll start working on a little bit of hair around his eyes. So I'm just going to cover up the nose area a little bit. And we'll just zoom in on, this eye. And then I'm going to make him more focused. Oops. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to make him. Oh, I've just seen a question here from Wendy. Is there a certain way of layering with the different brands, wax and oil based, all on top of wax? Do you know? It's paper dependent. It is paper dependent. So on a smooth paper, I would say, so on a smooth paper, I could layer either way, Polychromos, Luminance, Light Fast, Pablo. They would go down first, they would go down second. They would, you can kind of interlayer those, they would be fine. If you were using something like a Studio, so this is the Studio here, Derwent Studio, gorgeous pencils. You would not be able to, well, you kind of could, but it doesn't work very well. You wouldn't be able to layer over the top of other makes of pencil if you were using a smooth paper. On the film you can, and on pastel mat you can, but on a smooth paper it's harder. These pencils are wax based, but they're very hard and very subtle. Their colours are very subtle, so it's trickier to kind of layer them over the top on a smooth paper. I tend to put down wax first and then oil on the top. But actually, I don't think there's a right or wrong, and I don't think you get any. I don't think it really matters. I just do what I want, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. One day it might work, the next day it might not. So, right. So we're going to start working a little bit of hair around his eye here. This I'm using is the Pablo, and this is the Cocoa. This is the most gorgeous colour. Vinnie has got a lot of greys, there's a lot of cool greys and there's a lot of warm greys, and I'm just going to bring in some of this, which is quite a warm grey, but I'm going to combine it with some cooler greys as well, and I'm just going to start sort of, I don't know, sketching hair in. I might need to go a little bit cooler actually. I'm going to use, what's that? That is slate grey. Let's use this one instead. So this is the slate grey and it's the Luminance. So a lot of the time I'll kind of think, oh yeah, I'll use that colour, and then I put it on the paper. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. And I know I'm not really one for sort of planning stuff either. So this this is the first time I've drawn Vinnie. I've I haven't had a practice go at him at all. This is me winging it. On a live stream, which I'm not sure whether that's the best thing to do really, but the nose worked okay, so we're all right, I think. So I'm just gonna, for me it's just about sort of getting in the again the tonal qualities, starting to bring in some of those shapes. So nice light pressure. I'm just going to bring in some of his little eyebrowy bits in here. You might see on the video that this particular drafting film can have like a bit of a a texture to it. It almost looks like it's digital half the time, you know, because you can get, it's almost like a sort of like a pixelated effect. So again, just bringing in that colour quite light. When you're drawing fur, it is vital to follow the direction of the hair, and I like to kind of draw in the direction of the hair if I possibly can. With Vinnie, because he's so sort of wiry and hairy and there's hair going all over the place, it doesn't really matter. You know, you've got to kind of get the feel of it, and what you're wanting is you're wanting the layering of it as well. So he's got different sort of length hair, and you want to be able to kind of portray that it's layered up, you know, so there's some shorter bits, there's some longer bits, there's some lighter bits, you know, and trying to get all of those in, you know, is it's really important, because then you're going to get a real feel for you know, his personality as well, because that will come through from how you create the hair. We may need to go darker in the eye now that we've started to put some of this fur in. So again, we're just sort of sketching it in, not really that bothered about detail or, you know, anything like this at this point. Just getting all of that in there. And I tend to work in sections, so I don't sort of block hair in all over. It's just how my brain works. You know, I know a lot of artists will sort of like block in the whole area and just, you know, keep going back over and over and over. And I just, my brain just, it hurts when I do that. I have done a few tutorials like that, and they've worked out really well, but I've enjoyed doing them, but I have not been in the flow, so I haven't kind of lost myself. You know, I tend to go into almost like a bit of a, well, unless I'm recording, but if I'm doing a piece myself, you know, or a commission, I can go into sort of like a bit of a, you know, a meditative state. That's what I tell people anyway. It's when I fall asleep in my chair, I'm like, no, I'm in a meditative state drawing. But I can get really, really, really lost in what I'm doing, you know, and I lose all sense of time and everything, you know, and I'm just sort of sitting there just, you know, and that's this, how I create fur. That is how it works for me. You know, so right, so I'm just going to come in here and just add a little bit more of this eyebrow in here, because we've sort of got a bit that's a little bit more of the eyelid in here. Just make it a little bit darker. So I've kind of done the inside bit but not the outsidey bit. And then this is a little bit darker as well. That looks a bit greeny actually in there. And you know, just this type of fur is really, really nice to draw actually, because it is sketchy, you know, and it doesn't matter if it goes a little bit wrong, because, you know, it's just, you know, Vinnie's hair, it looked like this when I took the photograph. It'll look completely different now, you know, it'll change with the wind. So, you know, don't worry too much about getting every single hair in the right place, because it's not really, really not important. The things that are important when drawing animals, you know, especially if you're drawing sort of like a portrait for somebody, is capturing the likeness in the eye, obviously capturing the right shape of the head, all that type of stuff. But, you know, getting all of the hair in the right place, unless it's something, you know, like a spaniel that's got a particular shape, top knot or something like that, or, you know, you need to get colours correct, and the you know, if you've got a coloured animal, you need to get the shapes of the colours and everything like that correct. But the actual placement of the fur, it's not really that important, because fur will change. It will, you know, you'll get one curl here one day and then it will be different the next day. So, you know, don't get too hung up on drawing the fur in exactly the right place, because it's honestly not important. So you can see I'm just, you know, merrily sketching away. We're looking at you know, getting some nice fur in there. I'm not necessarily, well, my objective when I'm drawing an animal is to make it look as real as possible. I want people to say, you know, I could run my fingers through that hair. Obviously, if somebody tells me it looks like a photograph, I'm over the moon, but that's not my objective. I'm not wanting my piece to look like a photo. I'm wanting my piece to look real. I want people to think that the animal could actually step off the page. So that is something that I'm always aiming towards, you know, with my development. So I think every artist, you know, every piece they draw, they learn something from it. And that's one of the things that I'm, you know, that's my objective, is to create, you know, animals that could, you know, step off the page. Yeah, you know, and I'm learning all of the time. I'm kind of working on different techniques, learning different things, you know, and it's really important for me, you know, to develop. So I think the children have decided they're not going to be quiet anymore. She's had her hour and a half. That's it. We're all going to play our music again. So, and then I'm just going to bring in a little bit of that light cobalt blue into here over the top of the black, which is going to give it a bit of a bluey tinge in there. So the luminance over the top of the Polychromos is really, really nice on the film. And as much as the film is difficult to blend on, the luminance actually, you can get a little bit of blending with the luminance. They are a nice pencil to use. Okay, so that's all good. And then we've got, it goes into sort of like it's quite bluey around his eyes, so I'm just going to bring a little bit of that blue in there. And then I'm going to use this warm grey 4 Polychromos, and I'm just going to bring a little bit of this in here. Now with all of this, with all of the wiry hair, a good thing to do when you're using smooth paper is to kind of, you know, you can either use an embossing tool, and what I'm going to do, which some of you might be able to do, some of you might not, because you might not have the tool, but I'm going to use the slice tool just to bring in some of that texture, and you can kind of see how that works. It's quite nice to use it in this sort of an environment because you can actually see how it works live, and see, you know, see me going wrong and cursing and getting cross. You know, so I'm just putting pigment in, really, just getting that pigment in, ignoring the details for now. And in fact, something that I picked up from Jason Morgan was, you know, blurring your photo. If you've got something with tons and tons and tons of detail, blurring your photograph can really help. It makes you feel a bit sick to begin with, but you kind of get used to it, because you know, but blurring it, you get rid of all of your detail, and you're just stuck with your colours and your tones. That was a really, really good piece of advice that Jason gave out. I think it was one of his videos on YouTube, I think. Really, really good bit of advice, and that's something that I kind of, you know, I kind of pass on, always crediting Jason, of course, but is a really, really useful bit of information, because when you look at a piece like this, all you see is detail, all you see is this wiry fur, and you just think, oh my god, how on earth am I going to get all of that wiry fur in? But if you've only got your tonal qualities and your colour to sort of concentrate on, it's much easier. And then you can put, for pastel work, it works really well because you can put your lights and everything in over the top. And for a piece like this on pastel mat or on film, it works really well because you can put your details in afterwards. Oh gosh, who's this? I work mostly digitally at the moment, but I'm looking at getting into fine art with oils, though I've been curious about also mixing colour pencils, watercolour and gouache. In your experience, what's the market like for art in those medias relative to oil painting sales? Well, I mean, I can only speak for me. I would say that there is definitely a market for art. I would say that there's room for everybody, and it's about hard work, about getting your work seen, and you know, being quite good at marketing yourself. I don't think you have to be the most amazing artist in the world to be successful. I mean, obviously it helps if your work is good, but you don't have to be incredible. What you have to have is self-belief, and you have to be able to put your work out there. And in this day and age, use social media. You know, if you can use social media and you know how to use it, then you know, you're kind of halfway there. You know, a lot of artists, I think, when you talk about marketing, they freeze, and that's what gets really scary. You know, because they think, well, I don't know how to market. I don't have a degree in marketing or a qualification. I have no idea what to do. But if you've got self-belief and a little bit of confidence, then all you have to do is be yourself. So I would say that, you know, there's a good market for art. Art is not a necessity. You know, art generally is bought from the heart, but the heart for many people, you know, takes over from the head. So, you know, if you can get your work out there and you can get, you know, a good following and everything, then it's, you know, I think, you know, you'd be successful if you can kind of market your work. So what I'm going to use now is my slice tool. So this is the slice tool. This is the manual pen cutter, got a little logo there. And the slice tool, you can see, has got sort of like a chisel shaped blade. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start to pull in a few little hairs in here. If you haven't got a slice tool, don't worry. You know, you can use a knife or anything like that. The other thing I'd say as well is just be careful if you're going to use a slice tool that you test it first, because it can, some papers it doesn't work very well on. If you don't have a slice tool or anything like that, you can use like a little eraser like this, and you can bring in little bits of hair with your eraser. To use a bit harder than that, but you can bring in some nice texture and everything with your eraser. That works really well. And this is how I create texture in my fur, is a combination of eraser and the slice tool. They just work really, really well. If you're using a smooth paper and you haven't got either of those things, what I would recommend is that you kind of build in your little bits of hair as you're drawing them, you know, just to sort of help, because you won't be able to draw the light bits of hair over the top of your dark bits. So you know, that's something that you need to kind of take into account. So I'm just going to use this just to bring in a little bit of texture. So I'm using it very, very lightly. Oops, I'll just put those pencils down. And I'm just going to, like I say, just bring in a little bit of this texture into here. So I'm using it really lightly, and it's just taking off a tiny weeny little bit of the pigment here, just to create these sort of like little hairlines. Now I don't use this kind of as a substitute for you know, for drawing hairs. It's there to kind of aid me getting the texture. You can kind of see how that's kind of working in there. And then I'm just going to bring a little bit of a stray hair in there, a little bit of a stray hair in there. Hopefully you can see those. And then just really, really gently just pulling off that pigment. So I'm not cutting the paper, I'm just dragging the pigment off, but in quite a controlled way. And because of the shape of the blade, it means that I can get some really nice sort of fur type marks. And I can also go back in and put pigment in if I want to. Okay, so now I'm going to use, is that? Yeah, so I'm going to use this is the Cold Grey 2. Might be a little bit light, but I'm just going to start to bring in a little bit more colour in and around here. And you know, this is this is the really nice bit, because you can go a little bit mad. You know, you don't really have to, because of the way his hair grows, you don't really have to really concentrate that hard on where his hair is going. What we do have to get right is the perspective. So we are looking at sort of getting some layering and everything in there. I just need to bring that down a touch, don't I? Maybe bring it out a little bit. Just check on that. Contrast the focus there. Okay, so yeah, you don't really need to worry about where the hair's going. It's more sort of like scribbly, really. And we've got all sorts of different colours in there. So we've got this bluey grey, we've got some warmer greys, we've then got some white, well, not whites, but lighter greys, some silvery colours. So you can put all sorts of different colours in here to get to start to build up the fur. Now, when it comes to fur like this, it's very easy to sort of think, oh, this is going to be dead quick. I'm just going to whack all of this fur in and it'll be, it'll work really well. But actually, the layering process, the same process that we did for the nose is going to, it's going to be the same for creating hair like this. It's all about the layering. It's all about bringing in the colours, building it up. I'm just going to take out some of this graphite here. So it's still about working with your layers and getting everything working nicely. Just making sure you can see all of that. I think you can. And your colours, as you put your colours in and build your layers, then your details will start to come. So just being really quite quick in here, sketchy. Always remember, with a dog like Vinnie, who's sort of quite hairy, you've still got the dog underneath all of that hair, so you've still got all of the bone structure in there, that you need to kind of remember. So when we come to a little bit here where there's the cheek and the cheekbone, remembering that there's a cheekbone under there is important, because you still got to get that shaping in. So here I'm using the Tombow again, just to bring in some of that hair structure in here. Just because I'm taking it out doesn't mean that that's it finished. This is probably just layer, or what I'm taking out here will be layer 2, and there may well be, I don't know, 10 layers when we've finished. This is what I love about the Tombow, is that you can really get some lovely soft fur textures with it, and it's almost like drawing with a white pencil. You're bringing in those sort of highlights in there, and the shapes and all of that type of stuff. So I can bring in some shapes of the hair in here, just sort of bringing all of those in. I can bring some stray hairs in. I can bring a little bit of more hair in here. So it's almost like you're drawing with with the eraser, or the slice tool. So you'd use the slice for specific details, and then you'd use your eraser for sort of for softer hair details. And then I can come back in again. I'm going to take a darker grey. So I've got here. It's a cold grey 6. That might be a little bit too dark, actually. No, we'll stick with the cold grey. No, we won't. We've got this one here. This is a cold grey 4. Cold grey 4. So it's kind of in between. And then we can just start to bring in a little bit of these. And again, it's just following your reference photo and just, putting these bits of colour in. We can start to just bring it out quite nice and softly. A big sigh from Slipper there. She's completely bored. The other thing as well to remember is, you know, you've got your direction of your hair, but you've also got the length. You know, so if you've got a long-haired dog, your pencil strokes need to be long. If you've got a short-haired dog, your pencil strokes need to be short. You know, you don't want a Labrador that's sporting a, you know, really long hair all over its face, because it's just going to look weird. You know, so that's something to really, really take into account, is your pencil strokes. So we're being, you know, quite sketchy. We've got some darker areas that we can put in, and this the Vinnie's fur is actually quite nice fur to draw. I'll just another mouthful of tea. How long have we been going? Oh gosh, 2 hours. So I'm gonna stop in a second, because honestly I could just go on forever. you're all thinking, oh, we need to have some tea, let's go. What I'm going to do later tonight is do some more of this with voiceover for you, and I'll put it up onto YouTube for you. You know, so you can, if you want to, you can you know, you can follow a little bit more on the hair. But basically what I'm doing here is you know, it's going to be the same all over his head. Don't worry too much about particular strands of hair. And the other thing as well is, try not to get your hair so that you've got like real big, quite strong shapes. What you're wanting is, you're wanting softness throughout the piece. So, you know, if you can kind of get your colour in, you know, take out some of the texture, but don't leave yourself with too. So if I did this here and really took out a light area there, just brush that over a little bit, and then I go in with sort of like a darker pencil. What we don't want is something that's really like that. So you've got really dark and then really light throughout, because then you're going to have a dog that looks like it's got sort of you know, just sections of hair all over the place, and it's not going to look real. So what you're wanting is, you're wanting the connection between your shadows and your highlights. You know, I tend to look at each separate little piece of hair as on its own, you know, as its own little sort of masterpiece, if you like. So it's got its own light source, it's got its own shading, you know, it's but then it connects to the hair around it. But you don't want a big dark blob and then a big light blob. It all kind of sort of works nicely together, transitions together, you know, nicely. And then once we've got a little bit of grey in there, we can then bring something in like a silvery colour. I don't know whether I've got a silver grey. Oh, we've got a little bit of a, what's that there? That's mouse grey. You want something a little bit more sort of silvery, really, rather than, well, we'll use mouse grey, seeing as I've got it here. And then we can just bring in sort of, you know, a touch of colour into, this is a Pablo that I'm using here. Just touches of colour here and there. You know, it doesn't need to be everywhere. It can just be sort of like dotted in. We can use, oh, that'd be quite good, a good one actually, the Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey 50, oh no, 30, which is very bluey grey. You know, and we can just bring in sort of like little patches of bluey colour in there. You know, you might end up wanting to then just come in very, very gently with a little bit of black and put in, you know, some sort of like whiskery areas. Just put a little bit of a whisker in there. Anybody who knows me knows I'm terrified of drawing whiskers because they always go wrong, but these ones look okay. And then we might just need to sort of darken this area a little bit. So it's about sort of working with your photograph, with all of your colours, and just sort of drawing what's on the paper, but really taking notice of your darks and your lights. You know, so this piece is coming along quite nicely actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just zoom back out. Still got loads of you on here. I need to take my dog for a walk. Yeah, Luminance does have a silver grey, Tina. It's I just can't find it because pencils are everywhere. Right, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. We'll do a little bit of an overview of what we've done, and then just focus that in. Oh, it looks cute, doesn't it? It looks really cute. Right, okay. So so that is where we've got up to today. Like I said, I'll carry on a little bit with this later, and you know, I'll post up the video on YouTube as well, and then you can see how you know, more of what I'm doing. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed drawing this actually. Particularly enjoyed drawing the nose. I have to say, noses are just they're just my favourite things to draw. They really are. And Vincent has the best nose. Vinnie's real name is Seaton Valley's Starry Night. So he's a Scottish Deerhound. He's a purebred Scottish Deerhound. And we chose Starry Night because we wanted to call him Vinnie, and we chose Starry Night because Starry Night is one of Vincent van Gogh's paintings. So he's kind of connected to art as well, which is quite fun. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed drawing with me today. I will do a little bit more of the video for you and upload it to YouTube. You know, hopefully I'll catch some of you over on Jason's live stream tomorrow. I think that'll be quite fun. And thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Vinny's been a very good boy. I don't quite know what he's trying to do. He's sort of scraping his way along the floor. Yeah, I'll catch you all later. Thank you ever so much. So bye.